Well, hello, football fans. Week 6 of the high school football season is in the books. Finally, after another weather situation, we ended up having the hurricane, remnants of the hurricane come through Friday night, and ended up most of our games played on Saturday this week, as you know. But wanted to start off with the Friday game, and it was a God knows I've made mistakes in my life more than I can even fathom. But as I was standing there in the first half at Brebeuf against Roncalli, I was starting to put standing out there in the worst part of the wind and rain in the first half is sliding to the top of that list of mistakes because it was brutal. And especially in the first half, and really, Brebeuf and Roncalli were one of the I think maybe the only Marion County game that got in Friday night. Chittard and Guerin started to play, lost power out there, and then had to play their game on Saturday. But the worst of the wind and the rain and all of that, I think, was in the first half. Right around 7 to 8 o'clock out there at Brebeuf, and there were times where it was even coming out of I went to my car at halftime, and sort of maybe even would have expected or not been surprised if they would have called it at halftime. It was that bad. And then the second half, the wind lightened up somewhat, at least, and the rain lightened up for parts of that second half anyway. So it didn't feel as bad, I would say, in the second half as it did the first. The first was just you could feel the wind, the rain, the raindrops were even sort of painful, as they came down. I think the wind gusts were, the fastest wind gust I think was 70 miles per hour out at the airport. It was recorded, so that seems about right. It definitely felt that way. Excuse me, but I thought Roncalli, they definitely played into their favor, or they made it play into their favor in the first half. They were able to score 23 points going with the wind on their way to that 37-18 win, and really they only completed one pass, and Colin Ash threw a really nice one, 31 yarder to Drew Nelson, and put it right in his fingertips there. They were going with the wind, obviously, at that point, and that came right after a turnover by Brebeuf, and really Brebeuf. You think about everything they do offensively is sort of predicated off the passing game. They do run it pretty well with C.J. Harris, but it really felt like it was in Roncalli's favor to even play this game based on what the weather conditions were like. And they did throw it around a little bit in the second half and had a little bit of success. Even in the first half, they had some success, throwing it around a little bit, but you just couldn't do that. You couldn't do it reliably anyway. With the conditions the way they were, and then there in the second half they did get a little bit going, then lost a fumble that turned into a touchdown, that really sort of ended any threat. Brebeuf had to win that game, and from talking to the Colin Ash, the quarterback for Roncalli after the game, it was just sort of one of those things where you feel like it was a memorable game. No matter what happens, it was sort of the thing you'll remember. And he even said, "Hey, it wasn't fun all the time, out there." And I felt similarly, but it was fun, I guess, if you win the game, and it's definitely a memorable game from that standpoint. But Roncalli, 37-18, and it felt like that. It felt like they really dominated, especially the first half of that game. And they ran some option, did some things on offense to kind of keep Brebeuf guessing, so it wasn't just run straight ahead and that sort of thing. It was definitely run to the outside, run inside, and then they did pop that pass for a touchdown as well. And then defensively, did a nice job. After the first drive, Brebeuf scored on their first drive. They were going with the wind at that point, took a 7-0 lead. But really after that, they weren't able to do much on offense at all. And then once they were going into the wind, really sort of struggled to do much of anything on offense. So, Colin Ash ended up at 94 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns for that offense. Like I said, he threw that touchdown pass in the first half to Drew Nelson, 31 yarder, and they took a 7-6 lead at that after the quarterback sneak. Actually, that the Nelson touchdown believe put them ahead, as I remember, 14-6. And then they had Brebeuf had a punt sail over or a snap sail over the punter's head that led to a safety, and then turned it over right away. And then Ash, his longest play of the night, he went 69 yards around the end, and that put him up 23-6 late in the first half. And kind of at that point, it was somewhat of a wrap. But I think all the details will eventually be lost. Eli Lauk also had a really nice interception return, 96 yards for a touchdown. That was kind of the final blow there by Roncalli. That was late in the fourth quarter. That kind of accounted for their final touchdown. But it's just talking to Matt Geske after the game from Brebeuf, he said it's things that, some things were weather related that we're not going to see, even if the weather's bad. I mean, I can't imagine you'll have 68 mile per hour winds to deal with. Who knows? Maybe I knock on wood with that, because who knows what we'll see. But based on the weather we've had so far this season, but it was a game where I think there are some things they need to do better, like, because you are going to have some weather games and some conditions you're going to have to deal with, and he said that we need to do a better job with that, and do some things that make it easier for our passing game by running maybe a little bit better, and definitely stopping the run a little bit better in a game like that. So and again, a lot of these things to me, as I'm sitting there watching it, I'm like, they're never going to see anything like that. I mean, that was just such a bizarre situation, which, it's why a lot of teams didn't play. They were about one of the only ones on Friday night. But yeah, there were a handful of games on Friday. That was the one I covered, and again, it was wild and crazy, and from a weather standpoint, I give credit to the fans who stayed and watched, because I don't think I would have done that. So but a good win for Roncalli for sure, and they were fired up to play it. You could tell they were they were definitely into it, and enjoying sort of the weirdness of it. There were a few other games on Friday. Like I said, Chittard and Guerin tried to play. They were not able to finish that game. They had to come back and play on Saturday, and Chittard ended up winning 48-13, kind of running away in that game against Brebeuf, or against Guerin Catholic, excuse me. But yeah, so that was sort of the deal. And then Saturday, I did cover two games, including a number one Westfield against number two Brownsburg. And in that was the second game I saw. In the first game, I saw Lawrence North beat Ben Davis 58-28. So just to talk a little bit about I'll just, I guess, go in the order that I went to the games. But Lawrence North, I thought really it was just a weird game from a standpoint of it took forever. First of all, I think that the third quarter took an hour and 20 minutes, and I believe there were 38 points scored. Many penalties. I think 9 penalties in the third quarter. Incomplete passes that kind of stopped the game intermittently here and there. Just a super long third quarter. But at that point, Lawrence North was pretty well in command. It was 31-7 at halftime, and Ben Davis is just it feels like they're definitely struggling in the passing game to a large extent, and they did have Mark Zachary had a monstrous game, defensively and offensively. He was sort of their it wasn't a one-man, because Elijah Price also had a pretty good game offensively, running the ball and catching some passes. But really, Zachary was, kind of kept them alive, in a lot of ways in that game, and returning interception for touchdown, and, just making plays for him. But Lawrence North's the better, just a better overall team right now. And I really, to me, and I'm going to write about this for Monday, but to me, it's their defense. Is Marcus Jackson and Ludington, and as good as their offense is, and as dynamic as their receivers are, and they are very, very good. Davion Chandler, Demario Moore, and Monsoon Sales, man, all three of those guys, would be your number one on most teams, and those guys are playmakers, probably like no one else has as a receiving group. But also, man, their defense, they were making plays. They were the story to me, and we'll have a chance to talk more about this and write more about it. But they play Warren Central next week to battle 2 6-0 teams, and to me it kind of comes down in that game. It's going to be as good as Ellen's offense and Warren's defense are, and they are extremely good. But to me it's going to be what does it look like with Lawrence North's defense against Warren's offense, and after seeing both teams play, I would probably give the advantage to Ellen's defense. And again, you're basing it on a Ben Davis team that was kind of struggling to pass and really get things going from a passing standpoint a lot of times. But yeah, I mean, I was impressed. I just overall, I think Ellen's not only a team that has really good skill position players, but Xavier Moore, man, he was unbelievable out of the backfield. Making guys miss. It seemed like he'd make a great run, make guys miss, like Barry Sanders type stuff, and then the next play was even better. It just felt like throughout the game it was just making play after play. And he's only a sophomore, just a guy he's a lot like Elijah Price. Their running styles are similar. They're smaller backs, but make people miss. Just a lot of fun to watch. Those two kind of go back and forth with each other. But Xavier Moore was fantastic in that game too. But so that'll be fun to see. But yeah, Lawrence North wins at 58-28. At times Ben Davis had a couple chances to kind of get back into it there in the second half and just couldn't quite do that. And Ellen would have a big play and then kind of regain that cushion. And Ben Davis now 1-5, first time since 1974 that Ben Davis is 1-5. So you just don't see that very often from that Ben Davis team. But again, Lawrence North, Warren next week, 2 6-0 teams. That should be a lot of fun. And then the game that I had was the second game that I had was Brownsburg and Westfield, and that pretty good crowd really. I mean, you would have had. I know they lost a lot of money. I'm sure every team did. By not having those games on Friday night, but especially Brownsburg. I think that would have been a monstrous crowd. It was homecoming against Westfield, and I think would have been just a great atmosphere. And it still was pretty good anyway, even on a Saturday afternoon as a lot of fans came in, for that one. But the kind of the story in my mind was Westfield was. They were in. It felt like most of the game was played inside the Brownsburg 20-yard line, and every time, almost every time, other than the first drive that Westfield scored on, Brownsburg's defense would make plays. They made fourth down stops multiple times, and Westfield a couple times decided to go for it, didn't get it, and you kind of look back at that and wonder, if they kick field goals, maybe that ends up changing the game. And they did kick a couple. Even Brownsburg would still stop them later in the game, and they did start kicking field goals and making them. But a couple of those possessions they did not. And I thought a big play early on too was Brownsburg offense wasn't doing a whole lot, and Westfield had a bad snap over the punter's head. Brownsburg got a short field, ended up scoring. That made it 8-7. After a couple of offsides on the extra point, they went for two and got it. And then so then they go in, and Westfield came back down and had to settle for a field goal. But it's only 10-8 Westfield at halftime, and it felt like Westfield probably felt like they should have had a bigger lead. I felt that. Probably a lot of people felt that way based on how the game was going. But Brownsburg's defense, again, they were the story. They kept making it tough for Westfield in the red zone. And then once Westfield got a 13-8 lead, they settled for another field goal right at the end of the third quarter. And Brownsburg had been giving them chances with turnovers and giving the ball back to them. And then on a big play to that drive, though, right before the field goal, Carson Melvin, the starting quarterback for Westfield, was hit by Hunter Childs on a kind of a one-on-one play where he was coming off a zone read, Melvin was, and was just belted by Childs. And I'm hoping that Melvin, you kind of see him there on the sideline. I don't want to say what his injury was because I don't know exactly for sure, but looked like he was a little bit woozy. So hopefully he's okay and able to play after this week. But did not come back in the game and definitely was not looking his best or feeling his best at that point. But so Westfield ends up settling for the field goal. They take the 13-8 lead right there, but Brownsburg comes right back and they have a kickoff return by Brandon Sharp, and I think I said it was 96, but I believe it was 94 yards as he took the ball right about the 6 yard line. And he's dynamic, man. As a sophomore, he's a guy who can just make people miss, and great blocking. Great blocking on that. As I went back and watched that return, Drew Bostic kicked the kid out. There's one guy that he had to beat on the left side of the field there, and Drew Bostic kicked him out, and then up the field. There was another really good block about 10 yards up the field. And then Sharp just took it to the house, and there was really no doubt at that. Once he got to about the 40, he just kind of ran away from everybody. That was really, and Brownsburg didn't get the two, but going up 14-13 right there, the momentum really flipped, and then with Melvin out, it kind of changed how Westfield was moving the ball. They didn't do a whole lot after that offensively, and again, credit the defense for Brownsburg, but also it did. And John Hart even said that it changes things when Melvin's out. He's a D1 guy going to Bowling Green. He's a really good quarterback. Made a lot of big plays throughout the evening or afternoon as it was. But yeah, I mean, and then Brownsburg had a big drive. Got the ball about 9:30 left. Went. Took 6 minutes off the clock, and Yosua Stevens had come in at quarterback, and they ran a lot of zone read. He ran, I think, 7 times. They went to Lewis on the ground as well, but just kind of ran the ball at Westfield. That was a key moment because Westfield's defense also really good, but able to take 6 minutes off the clock, and then Orlando hit the field goal from 27 to put them up 17-13. That's only 3 minutes left at that point, and Westfield's offense could not do anything at that point to get the ball back up the field. So ends up, they had the ball once more too. They had the ball twice actually in the last 3 minutes, but both pretty deep in their own territory and no real threat at any time to get him scoring position, and needed a touchdown at that point too. So that didn't look probably doable. So yeah, I mean, Westfield loses. They had been in some close games, and I did wonder down the stretch how that may help or affect things, but it didn't happen for them, and I think I think it's just one of those years, man. I don't know, Brownsburg may end up undefeated in the regular season. One of LN and Warren may have a chance to end up undefeated. But man, to me, it really feels like there's not just not a slam dunk number one team this year, and maybe Brownsburg. I think Brownsburg will jump to number one probably this week based on this win and what they've done so far. But there's definitely times in that game where I felt like they were kind of hanging on a little bit based on all the turnovers and all the positions they put their defense into. But I know their offense can play better and has played better than they did yesterday. And, of course, you're facing a really good team. Westfield's defense is legit, so that's a factor as well. But, yeah, it feels like one of those years where there's just not a slam dunk number one right now anyway to me. But Brownsburg will be that, I think, this week. And we'll see if they can hold on to it the rest of the season. But yeah, so that was kind of the games I was at. They were both very interesting games, and I think I learned a lot. I think I learned LN is very, I knew they were good, knew they had a good offense, knew they had very talented players on the defensive side, but I was very impressed with just their overall team and how they handled that game. Other than throwing it in Mark Zachary's direction at any point seems not advisable, and Pat Mallory said that after the game as well. Like he's just talking on his headset, like, why are we throwing in any direction of Zachary? But other than that, man, it was a very dominant win for Lawrence North. Very good win for Brownsburg as well, as they moved to 6-0 also, and so both those teams still undefeated as we get into the second, actually the last third of the regular season. I can't believe we're to that point already. But we are. So, and then some of the other games last night, I know Clark Wade, he went out to the Martinsville Whiteland game, and Martinsville jumped out to a 20-0 lead and had to hang on. Whiteland came back down and got all the way to the 2-yard line. They cut the lead to 20-13 and had the ball at their own 2 and traveled all the way down to the 2-yard line of Martinsville. And were stopped, on the last play. Basically, they got to the 2 on the last play, and were stopped there, as time ran out. So that was a wild one. Martinsville kind of has been on the other end of games like that, where especially the Decatur Central game, where they had to come from behind by 35 points to win. But hanging on this time, that's a typical mid-state type game. We see those a lot, and also staying with the mid-state. Decatur Central beat number one Plainfield, so both number one 6A and 5A. Plainfield was number one in 5A. They go down to defeat against Decatur Central, which is arguably, I would say, maybe the most talented 5A team in the state, and they were on the losing end of that Martinsville game, but they come back yesterday, get a pretty decisive win over Plainfield, 42-21 in that one. I know Casimir Hicks had, I had to look at the stat. I think he had 4 touchdowns. Had a run, a 94-yard run, a 99-yard kickoff return, and 2 shorter touchdown catches from Bo Poston. So big game for Casimir Hicks, who's maybe one of the fastest guys. You want to talk fast guy? I mean, Hicks, Sharp, the LN guys, Chandler, Zachary. We got some speed in Central Indiana this year for sure. But Hicks is a lot of fun to watch. He had a big game. Plainfield goes down for the first time this year, and again, it's a game that you could see down the road as well. Those teams are now in the same, or have been in the same section, and still are. And Whiteland's also in there with those two. So we'll see how that how that plays out if they do end up playing each other again. But the Decatur Central gets the win, and like I said, number one, and I don't 5A, man, it's just even 6A looks wide open, and I would say 5A also. We've had in our USA Today poll that we do each week, it's just been multiple teams getting votes for number one in 5A. So it'll be interesting to see who rises up to number one in that class. Also yesterday, Carmel beat North Central 48-14. Anthony Colner had had a couple touchdown passes at least. He was only threw for 87 yards, so they ran the ball quite a bit and got past North Central in that one. Center Grove, a little bit closer game probably than expected with Lawrence Central, which is a talented team. In a bigger story there, Eric Moore, his 300th win overall, including his years in Florida coaching. So Center Grove has won a lot in recent years, and Eric Moore's been doing it for a long time, and gets another one, gets the third, his 5th win of the year. Trojans 5-1 now. That game was only 17-12 at halftime, and even going into the fourth quarter was 20-12. So LC had a touchdown then in the start of the fourth quarter, or the first touchdown of the fourth quarter to cut that down to a 20-18 game. So close one for Center Grove, which had to settle for a couple field goals, and their passing game was clicking. They had a lot of yards, 348 through the air, but Terry Walker for LC also had 239 for the Bears. So they were able to do some things offensively too. So interesting. You kind of we always do the comparative scores thing, and some teams had beaten. I watched Warren handle LC pretty handily a couple weeks ago. And of course, Center Grove Warren, as you look ahead and start talking about playoffs and whatnot, those teams could definitely meet in the regional. Most likely will, based on what we've seen so far. So Center Grove gets a win, 27-18. Lebanon beat Tri-West 30-16. That game, Lebanon had to come from behind. They were down 16-7 at halftime, came back and beat Tri-West, scored 16 in the fourth quarter to knock off Tri-West 30-16. Fishers beat Avon 27-13. Those teams both have quarterbacks out, unfortunately, and that's of course a big part of high school football, having experienced talented quarterbacks. Unfortunately, we've seen a lot of quarterbacks go down this year. It feels like to me, maybe more than usual. But Fishers gets the win. Perry Meridian beat Greenwood 35-28. Jonathan Hunter, a big game, and the Falcons win a close one in that one. Let's see, Mooresville beat Franklin 26-21. A big game for Connor Cruz, had 328 through the air for Mooresville. Mount Vernon, in a game played Friday night, Mount Vernon beat Pendleton Heights 14-10. Another game from Friday, Taylor beat Sheridan 12-11. So not much offense. Taylor scored all 12 points in the fourth quarter in that game. So Just kind of a weird game there, which we see those weather games are weird sometimes. Lutheran also on Friday night beats Cena 33-6. And then Western Boone beat Frankfurt 35-0. And I think those were all Logansport beat Hamilton Heights 41-10. Those were all the Friday night games. And then Milan beat Eastern Hancock 8-0. That was also played Friday night. Lapel lost to Rushville 18-6. So most of those games, I believe all those games were played Friday night. And Park Tudor actually too. They beat Blackhawk Christian out of Fort Wayne Friday night 39-20. So as I count up, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Only 10 of our Central Indiana games were played Friday night. Also, Yorktown beat Shelbyville 33-0. So just not a whole lot of Friday games this week. But Saturday morning, Warren Central beat Pike 18-7. Again, that score a little bit closer than I might have expected, or maybe people expected, based on what we've seen here recently from those two. But Warren, again, like I mentioned, they'll be 6-0 going into that big game with Lawrence North next week. Let's see what else. Cascade stayed undefeated, 56-21. They beat North Putnam. So the Cadets, I think, that may be the first 6-0. So I have to go back and look at that. But were pretty rare for them to be 6-0 still at this point in the year. Yeah, so just kind of going through some of the stuff from yesterday. Still kind of getting caught up on all of it from yesterday, but just trying to give you some of the highlights. Triton Central beat Ritter 36-21. Let's see. And we'll have all of our players of the week and everything posted later, hopefully later tonight. Get behind the Sundays are the new Saturdays, basically. So trying to get caught up on everything. Hamilton Southeastern, yeah. So going through some of the Hamilton Southeastern beat Zionsville 25-14. HSC ranked number 8 in our 6A poll. Crown Point, that was a big one up north. They beat Valpo 41-7. So Valpo, they're ranked second in 5A. Crown Point ranked 4th in 6A. So that game not even close. Crown Point, it's hard to do the comparative thing when they don't play a lot of this because of just where they are geography-wise. They don't play a lot of the teams that we see down here. So, but I think that they're very much a contender, very much a real team. They made the state finals last year in 6A, beat Westfield in the semi-state, and a lot of the same players back for that Crown Point team. So they are, I think, a legit contender. New Pal, it did mention their game yesterday. New Pal goes to 5-0. They demolished Greenfield Central 38-0. So any thoughts of that being a close game go out the window. Greenfield Central was ranked number 5 in 4A. So if that was accurate where they were ranked, I mean that kind of tells you something about where New Pal's at right now as a program. Martinsville, of course, I mentioned they beat Whiteland. They're ranked 3rd right now in 4A, and then Chittard is ranked 4th. So Evansville Wrights, they were ranked 2nd, lost to Castle, which is a bigger school. So we'll see if that drops Wrights down. But Martinsville could move up. Chittard, you would think both those teams would move up. And Brebeuf, number 7 in 4A, lost to Roncalli. So they will most likely bump down. I would think Roncalli might have a chance to be ranked this week in 4A. Probably should be ranked in 4A. In 3A, locally, Guerin Catholic got beat, of course, by Chittard. Guerin's ranked number 8. Will probably drop down. There was a big game out of our area, but Heritage Hills beat Gibson Southern 28-0. Those teams ranked 2nd and 3rd, respectively. So big win for Heritage Hills. They look like they're definitely a legit team. Normally they are. I mean, that's been a good program for a long time. In 2A, Lutheran, number 3, they roll. Number 4, Western Boone, they roll as well. Triton Central, like I mentioned, beat Ritter. And then Heritage Christian, they beat Madison 18-8. So, again, playing a bigger school. Heritage Christian improves to 5-1 on the season with that win over Madison. And then in 1A, I'm not sure if we have, let's see, I don't believe we have any ranked teams in 1A right now. So kind of some of the bigger games out of the area. North Judson, they're 6-0 now. They beat number 6 Triton 40-0. So North Judson pretty much number 1 with a bullet right now. They're a team that's been played pretty deep in the tournament the last couple of years, and again they look like maybe they're the team to beat in Class 1A this season. So like I said, it was a good day. It was yesterday at least. Friday made you kind of reconsider what you're doing. Because it was brutal out there, but it was fun. A fun couple of games yesterday. Again, I'll have a lot more on all this in our Monday insider wrap up. But if I didn't mention, if I didn't mention any of your games, and Monrovia beat Speedway. That game was yesterday too. Monrovia, in my opinion, they should be moving up in the rankings. They hadn't been ranked in 2A. I think they were two spots out of being in the top 10. They beat Speedway 42-21 yesterday. So another good win for that Monrovia squad, which they're going to run the ball and keep doing it over and over, and they do it well. Indian Creek beat Edgewood 43-14. Greenwood Christian went on the road against North Central Farmersburg and wins 33-21. Franklin Central beat Noblesville. Didn't mention that one, 35-28 again. So Noblesville, another close loss that they just can't quite get over the hump, it feels like. Bloomington South beat Southport 41-0. And Beech Grove beat Covenant Christian 31-11. So that's about it for Central Indiana. I've gone on long enough here, but had 3 games to talk about, so I wanted to get all that in. And again, have a great weekend. We'll see you next week. It should be a lot of fun. There are a lot of good games again on the Week 7 schedule for next week, including that big one between Warren Central and Lawrence North, and also there was the Center Grove Cathedral game is Friday as well. So that's been a good rivalry the last few years. So that should be a good one. I believe that game will be played at Marion, as I recall. So that should be a fun game as well. Kind of see where it'll be. What do they call it? Judgment Week on ESPN or whatever. That might be Judgment Week. Have a couple top 10 games between teams, between rival programs, and those are always make for a fun atmosphere as well. So again, I've gone on long enough here, but we'll see you soon, and appreciate you listening in.